Hello class, welcome to week 3. This week we are going to talk about structured query language. So let me actually go over to our week 3 and discuss what we're going to talk about. So the previous module we saw how relational database allows us to store data in a consistent manner. So we talked about relational databases. This week we're actually going to get down to the nitty-gritty and start actually writing some code. So we're going to learn the basic SQL statements for creating a database structure, or also consider a schema. We're talking about how to add data to a database, how to select, make select statements, how to add data, and so forth. So we'll talk about different types of data. We'll talk about subqueries. We'll talk about joins and so forth. So we'll learn the basics here within SQL. Learning resources this week. Read chapter 3. Slides is not going to be slides. It's going to be me talking. So prefer to do the verbal thing versus giving you guys a PowerPoint and saying, here, read it. The summary, do in PDF format. Just give me, based off your summary of the chapter. So what you read in the chapter, you'll put it there. There'll be a quiz that you need to take. Module 3 is discussion structure query language. So you'll want to talk about this, about SQL, what it is. And so it mentions that it's used to manipulate and query data in a database. So this is a discussion. So you're going to define 2 select queries for the use of, let me actually click into it. So you're going to read this here. There's a lot of information here. But you're going to kind of give your opinion on this and how this should work, and should you do a group by or should you not. So read that for the discussion question and talk about it in class. There is, for further study, is, you could read through more, and then assignment 3 aspect of it is important. So this is the actual assignment, and I'm actually going to show you how to do the assignment in the lab when it's said and done today. Okay, so let's start with our week. So structured query language. Learn basic SQL statements for creating database structures, how to add data, how to write select statements, subqueries, so forth. So we'll walk through all this. So acronym, SQL, what's it stand for? Structured Query Language. It was developed in the 1970s, named SQL. We say SQL as S-E-Q-U-E-L. It was adopted in 1992. So 2011, it was considered a current standard. So what is SQL? SQL is a programming language, but for databases. It allows us to pull information up. SQL is a way to get a feed. So popular websites that use SQL that you probably wouldn't think about is, let's go to Instagram. I'll pull up my Instagram site. But this right here is using SQL. It's saying select everything from, where ground by the grapes equals this. And what it is a feed. You see this feed right here. This feed is actually, you see code. When you go into the code, you see, oh, okay, it's written in maybe some JavaScript here or some HTML. And you see this, but what you don't see is you don't see the SQL in the background. So it's using SQL to query the information. It may be using a web service, cool cat, or whatever the case is. But it's using a SQL statement. This SQL statement is saying select everything from somewhere and order by, and it just keeps going up and down. And that's a SQL statement. So if you go and look at Twitter, you go to look at Instagram, you go and look at Facebook, they're all using SQL statements in their code. And you just don't even realize it. But without SQL, it could do this in programming language, but it would make it a little difficult. It's easier to query the information versus having to do it a different way. So that's an example of a website that uses it. So what is DDL? So DDL is data definition language. So it's used to define structures. So if I was creating a new structure, so let's say that someone came to me and said, hey Jeff, I need you to create a new table. All right, so if I was going to write some code to create a new table, then that would be considered a data structure. So let's say, for example, someone came to me and said, hey, go ahead and create a new data. Let me do a shift up here. Oops, I don't know if it'll work on here or not. it don't work on. It only works on my code aspect of it. I'll hit cancel. All right. So let's say someone come to me and say, "Hey, create a new." Let's say that we wanted to create a new table called the BO called standings, and then I did something like this. I created a table. I called it. I gave it a row number, int for integer, and let's say standings is team name, and we'll talk about what all this means shortly. So let's say I had team name. We had maybe wins, so that'd be an integer. Maybe we had losses, that would be an integer. Maybe we had ties, that would be an integer. And maybe, let's see, we had row number, wins, losses, team name. And maybe we had some type of foreign key relationship, but for right now, let's just say we have this. This right here would be considered a DDL. So a DDL is anytime that you're creating a new schema. So we're creating a new table. But let's say I was making a change to this table. So let's say I was adding something, altering the table. So let's say I wanted to do an alter table, which would be alter standings, and I wanted to add a new column. So you have to put alter table, if you can spell right, and then you have to put the name of the table. And we'll talk about all this, but I just want to kind of give you an example. So let's say we wanted to create a new column name. So let's see, let me get an example here. ESPN.com, I'm going to look at standings to use it as a reference. Let's see here, an FO standings. Let's see if there's something here that we could add in this example. All right, so we got win, loss. All right, so we have position, percentage. We have home, away. Wow, we have a lot of things that we could do difference. So let's go back to my code here and say we'll do home. So let's say that we want to add maybe percentage, PCT, and percentage was, I think it was a percent. So it's actually using a decimal. So we put PCT, and then we add, and then we define what it's going to be. So we're going to be a decimal. So we could put either decimal or numeric. So I'll just put decimal, and let's just make it numeric. All right. So I said it's numeric. I do something like that, and that right there would be considered a, what's going on here? Alter is not valid in a position. And if okay, it's fine because I don't have where it's reading from. But this right here would be altering a table. So we're taking this table right here and we're adding a new column called PCT for percentage, and we're declaring the variable. That would be a DDL. Another thing that we could do is we could drop the table. Say drop a table. Drop is just getting rid of the table completely. So it's like deleting a record on your computer. So we'll say delete or drop table, and the table name is standings. Oops. Perfect. That is another way of a DDL. So you are giving a script that is creating a table. You're talking about how to alter a table. Those are all examples of a DDL. Okay. So let's go back here. What's a DML? It's data manipulation language. So it's when you want to add data. You're updating or running code. So let's say that we wanted to do a DML. So DML is when you're adding data. So let's say that our insert into our table, which is a DBO standings. And once again, we'll talk about what all this means later. But let's say that we're adding data. So for example, let's say that we're going to add team name. Oh, here, team name. We're going to add wins. We're going to add losses. We're going to add ties. And then we have the percentage. So we got to add a percentage. And maybe that's a calculated field, whatever the case is. So we'll do select. Now we're doing this select statement. We'll talk about what that is. So we give it a name. We'll say Steelers. We'll say they have how many wins? There are 6 wins. We're using an integer, so we have to put a number. We don't put ticks around it. How many losses? They got 2. How many ties they got? They got 1. Or no, actually it's 5, 2, and 1. 5, 2, and 1. And what's their percentage? I don't know, so I'm going to make something up and say 0.521. Oh, there you go. So there's their percentage. That right there is an insert statement, and that is considered a DML. Okay. Another one would be an update statement. So that is an example, is insert. And then if I wanted to update a table, so another one would be updating a statement table. So let's say I wanted to update standings, let's say DBO. Standings, and let's say I wanted to set the team, let's say set the wins equals how many wins, and say I made a mistake and it was 6 wins, and then we'd say where row ID equals something, so maybe it's 2, and then that would be an update statement. So that would be another example of using a DML. So that would be a good example there to start off with. So now we talked about DML. Another thing could be, it mentions about data retrieval, so that could be a select statement too as well. I didn't think about that. So you could also have a select statement such as query, and you can say select all from standings where team name equals Browns, love the Browns, just kidding, and wins equal 2. So that would be a way to query information as well. That'll probably be the same thing that's going on here. All right, so that is an example of a DML. SQL persistent store module, procedural programming. So that's something called a store procedure, and that is I don't know if we'll get to that in this class. Actually, I don't think we will, because this is more of an introductory. But the SQL store procedure is a way to write a programming code. And then you could have multiple things happening. So for example, if I wanted to write a SQL statement, an insert statement, or an update, we could write it all on one line. We have to go from one to one. But if we write a store procedure, then we could easily call the store procedure, and what it does is it runs the script completely. So you have a script name. So for example, let's say that we had, for example, so let me create a new SQL statement. So let's say that we had a store procedure called, so let's say we had this store procedure and it was called insert data, right? So, and let's say we'll say it was called insert data step 1, something like that. All we would have to do is call that procedure. So we just have to do execute insert data step 1. That's it. So we'd run this statement right here, and then what it would do is it call that statement right there. That statement might have all this stuff in it, and once it calls it, it executes it. That's what that is. But like I said, we won't really talk about it too much in this class. Let's see, transaction control language, TCL. So that's when we'll talk about transactions that you make per transaction. We'll get a little bit more in greater depth at some other time with that. Same thing with the data control language. It's great in adding permissions, and we'll get into that when we get into database administration. SQL, create, alter, drop, and truncate. I just showed you how to create. I showed you how to alter. I showed you how to alter the data structure. I showed you how to create a table. And I'll show you more as well. And I showed you how to drop. Now, what is truncate? So there's two different things when you have data. So let's say, for example, I think I might have something in here. I don't. This is good. We'll add some data in here. So I'm going to add it the easy way instead of writing an insert script. So let's say that I have course number 406. Course, let's see what I have is the value here. I have it as a char. Okay, so we'll say the course is databases, and we'll say the course date is 01/01/2019, and the fee we'll say is, let me see what kind of fee I have, decimal. So let's say the fee is $4.50, 50 cents. All right, perfect. And let's say that, let's add another course, 407. We'll say this is Python. We'll say it starts maybe a week off after that, 08/2019. This is just all fake, 50.75, all names. All right, so I have these two values here, and so there's two things. There's truncate and there's delete. So let's say that I wanted to delete something. So if I typed in delete from the test dot, which is the test is the name of the database, course is the name of the table, and I said where course number equals 406. Okay. So what I could do is I could highlight this, and delete will delete that row, hypothetically. So as you see, this is I deleted it. Now even though we see it there, we have to highlight it and hit execute, and look, oh, that's where it deleted everything. So, oh, you know what? I must have deleted everything. That's not right. Hold on. Okay, what's going on here? Let me not say that. Let's do this real quick. I deleted everything, so that's not what I wanted. So let's do this. 401. Oops. Course is databases. Date is nope. 01/0. Oh geez. 01/2019. Fee is 580. I'll just put 580. So what I want to do is delete. But now I wanted to talk about truncate. This is where I wanted to get to because that was one of them. So if you type in truncate table, and name of the table is test.course. So two things happen. So let me tell you this. When me pull up Sublime, because Sublime is better for this. So let's create a new screen. So when you do a delete statement, what it does is it keeps the transaction. So it keeps the files around. So for example, let's say you go out on your computer and you delete a file, right? If you wanted to use software to get that file back, you can, because you're kind of deleting a space on the disk drive, but it still allows that space to be overwritten, and it allows you to get the information back. Well, that's how delete statements are. Now, if you run software on your computer to, like, say for example your iPhone or your Android, and you run the software to erase everything on there, you know how like when you go to trade your phone in, they want to make sure that you erase all your files on there? That's kind of what the truncate is. It completely wipes it out and leaves no history. So once you do a truncate, you can't get the data back. Okay, so if I do this right here, truncate table, it truncates it, maybe. It truncates it, and it should automatically go over. But anyways, it's null. So that means that I deleted all the data, and if I wanted to do something called a rollback that we'll learn in this class, I can't roll back. You know why? Because it's completely gone. Same thing as you wipe your phone, it's gone. Okay? Hopefully you got that. If not, you'll tell me about it. All right, so that's truncate. This right here, I'm not going to go through, but I'll let you. I would suggest that you guys really maybe practice this, so you learn it a little bit more. One of the things is I use the int instead of integer. You could use either or. Int is a acronym for it, and it actually works either way. But I'll let you play around with that. Create a database table with a primary key. So one of the things is when you're creating your tables, you know, like when, I don't know if I have a query here, so yeah. So when I create this table right here, you want to give, this right here is called an attribute, and this right here declares the type of attribute it is. You have to think about what type of value is going to be holding. So an int is an integer, which is a whole number. Okay, so some of the different values that you'll work with, you use an integer, and it's a whole number. So what that means is anything that with a value of 1, 2, 400, that could go in there. Another one would be a decimal. So decimal has different positions. You might have position 2 and 4 spaces. So you might be dealing with money. So it might be 455.45. 5. So 4 spaces means you could get rounded up and keep all those values. That's a decimal. Another one that you might work with is a varchar. So varchar is a string value. So anything that would be like team name, that would be a string value. You also want to give it how many spaces. So let's say 25. So what that means is I have 25 lines So it would be like this. If I did 25 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right, so I have 25 spaces. That means that's how many spaces I have to add values. Now, let's say that I wanted to add Pittsburgh Steelers. Do I have the room? Yeah, I have room. So it actually leaves extra space because I think that's what, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's 22 spaces. So that means I got 23. Let's do this. 23, 24, 25. So Wildcard 25 means that anything up to 25 spaces. Now let's say that I wanted to add something else at the end of it. And I want to put SSSSS and I went over 25. Well, what would happen is when it goes to query the data, it's only going to do the 25. If it's 28, 29, anything over, it's not even going to hold the value. It's only going to hold up to the first 25 characters. So that's what that is. I apologize, I have to drink water. I'm running out of talking here. All right. Another one is a char. These are common ones that we'll use in a class. So char is immediate space. So here's the thing. If you query Pittsburgh Steelers, and let's say that we'll go back to the idea that we didn't use the spaces. So if I queried it and said, select all from teams, and and I got the values back, it would just say Pittsburgh Steelers, like this. It worked fine. So let's say I gave it a char, and I gave it 25, right? And then I did select all from teams, and I would get this. I would get Pittsburgh Steelers, but then I get all the spaces in here. So you'd see the spaces in here. So you'd have the value like this, and it'd be kind of funky. So if you pulled it back to like a user screen, they couldn't use it. It'd just be a mess. Sometimes you might have lines in here like this, exactly, and that's not what you want. A char is when you know how many characters it's going to be. It's going to take up the entire space. So a good example of that would be, let's take states. Abbreviations is 2. So if I wanted to say select all from states, you know, like any state that we use, PA could be one. MI for Michigan, FL for Florida, CA for California, WA for Washington, OR for Oregon, MD for Maryland, anything along that way, LA for Louisiana. So you get my gist. Those are 2 characters, and so those would be what you use a char for. Okay. All right. So constraints, primary key. You always want to have a primary key. It's the key that means something on the table. So it's the unique key of that table. So for example, if I was doing, let's say, here we did standing. So let's say row number is our primary key. So we could say, hey, this is our primary key. It means something. That just means that, all right. That just means that that primary key is the main key. So there's different ways of doing it. You could do it this way, or you could do it this way right here, where you could add the constraint. Constraint means that, hey, we have a employee. In this example, we're saying that the employee skill primary key is the main key, and we're saying, hey, we're giving it the name of the primary key. So this is the constraint that we're using. And we're saying, hey, employee ID is unique, and so is skill ID, which means they can't be duplicated. And here's another thing I didn't explain, is when you create your tables like this, I have Wildcard 25, but I don't have this information here. If you put not null, what that means is when someone goes to add a value, it can't be blank. If it's blank, it will not take it. So you have to think about requirements. If you have a table that has required information, like say for example, you're creating something for a new customer at bank. So they're going to need social security number, they're going to need the first name, last name, city, state, zip, basic information, birthday. If you say, I ain't got that information, well, it's not going to allow you to add it. Okay? All right, so another one with a constraint is a foreign key relationship. And we'll talk about that. It's a foreign key basically is when you, let me see, I actually have an example here. I think I do. All right, so let me go back here and I'll pull up an example. All right. So this is an example of a foreign key relationship. So we'll say that in this example, vehicle is the parent and driver is the child. So the parent has the vehicle ID over here, but you also notice that the vehicle ID is over here in the child area. Well, what that means is it has a foreign key relationship. It means that we can join this table on this table by linking the vehicle IDs up together. So that is a foreign key constraint. We could build this constraint saying that what that means is when we go to add a vehicle, we have to add a value over here as well for the driver so that they could be linked up together. What we can't do is we can't go directly into this table and put another value that doesn't exist in here because they have a relationship and it will not work. Okay? All right. Second. All right, so now back to this. We're talking about primary. Okay, so that's how you would do that. Yeah, so when you look at this here, it gives an example of SQL Server. We're going to skip over this because we're not using that, but we're using MySQL how to create a table. So just walk you through the structure, and I'm going to do that as well. SQL Server Management. Oh, that's the wrong one. We're going to actually, as you've seen right here, we're going to do this in another class. I'm going to teach you how to do this as well. When I say another class, another week. All right, so let's move on. Alter table, I showed you how to do that in my little example here. So all I did here, when I go back to what I did, let's see here. Alter table. So I wrote alter table. Alter means you want to make a change. Table is the term that you have to use. Then after that, you want to put the name of the table that you want to change. In this case, I want to add percentage numeric. So I could just do this. Actually, I don't even know if I even did this. I didn't even do any of this. This is just me playing around. So if I were going to really create it and do that. So I didn't even, because I didn't even add anything there. So you would do this first, and then you would do that second. But we're going to show you how to do it anyways in class here. So it would be important that you do one and then do the other afterwards. Let's actually do it for row. So let's do new query, and we'll do create table. We'll see if it lets us create it. So copy it, SQL 8, paste, and run query. All right, so give us an error. It says check the manual corresponds to MySQL. All right, what's it saying here? It's barking about something. Come on. Oops. Because I don't have a primary key. Perfect, that's fine. We'll add a primary. Oh, because I have that in there. That's why. Forgetting about it. We have a row number, which will be like our unique ID, but we'll put the primary key down here. Yeah. And we have team name, and we have our ties, and then we're going to do this in another thing anyways, not a big deal, but we could do a couple different things. The row number, we want it to be something that changes the number automatically for us. So let's put not null, and let's make it an auto increment, which means that the number will start at 1 and automatically add a number to it every time. Okay, so team name, will say that it's not null as well. We have to say that they always have to put something in there. Same thing for wins, we'll put not null. Losses, not null. Just means a constraint that it can't ever enter data that doesn't have anything in there. It has to have a value. Okay, so so we have that, and then oops, comma, and then we could put a no. Then we could put a constraint on here. We could say constraint that I talked about, and we'll say that it is we'll have to have a primary key on here. So we'll say, let's change this row number. Instead of calling it row number, which is not unique enough, let's call it standings ID. That's fine. So we'll say our constraint is, and we'll call our constraint standings, and we'll say PK for primary key. If it was FK for foreign key, that's what you would want to do. And then we'll say, what is it? We're saying it's a primary key. Excuse me. And then in parentheses, we'll put the name of the column that we already placed up here called standings ID, like that. And, oops. And then we can do, let me see here. So we could do, okay. And then we can do a semicolon down here, which executes it. So what we're saying is we want to create a table called standings. We're going to have a standings ID. It's an integer. It's not a not null, which means that you can't add a value to it if it's blank. It has to always have a value. Auto increment means that it starts at 1 automatically increments. Team name, varchar, means it's a string value and it always has to have a value. Wins is an integer, losses is an integer, ties is an integer, also not nulls. And then down here we're building a primary key on standings, and we're saying that the primary key is this guy right here. So now if I execute it, oh, it didn't like it for some reason. Unknown, okay, unknown database. All right, so because I have to put the database name. See, this is SQL Server context right here. So let's use the database test. So let's call it test. Now if I run it, it should be fine. All right, 0 rows affected. Not a problem. That just means it created the table. So let's refresh it. So if I hit test, I could do refresh. Or you could do this guy right here. It refreshes it. And we should have standings. There we go. We have standings now. Perfect. Now if I query it, we're not going to have any values. So that right there allowed us to create the table. Now I was going to show you about the alter table. Alter it. So if we wanted to alter the table, like I was saying, at percentage, so let's copy this. We'll put it over here. So now if I wanted to come down here and do this, now you notice right here, when I go into columns, it has these columns here. So if I do this, I'm going to have to put the name of the database, test.standings. Yep. And then if I highlight it and hit run, it shows down here that it worked. So what I'll do is come up here, refresh it, and ta-da, now we have PCT. That's how you add a column to it. Okay, so hopefully that was beneficial. Let's see, let me get back to my lecture. Let's go back over here. All right, so that is that. Just scrolling through here because we've already talked about all of this. Create table, da-da-da. We talked about all that right there. Foreign key relationship. So if you're going to create a foreign key, you could actually, where's my code at right here? I actually did one for another class. Well, let me pull up Emily's code. Emily. So there was someone I was helping do some homework here. So in this example right here, we they had already created tables, and they already had tables in place, and so all I wanted to do was add to their existing database, which they have right here. So they already had stuff in place. They had actors, and they already created a table. So they had this table here called actors, had a table called television show. So what I did was I created a foreign key relationship on it. So the first thing I had to do is in the actors, it didn't have a table name. So if you remember when I showed you this right here, where it had this ID right here, we had vehicle ID. So that's kind of the example of what's going on here. This one didn't have, actors is the child, and television show is the parent, okay? Because it already has its primary key is television show, right? And as you see here, PK. So what I did here is I altered table actors, and I just added a column called television show ID. Perfect. That was step one. Step two, what I did is I altered table actors and added the foreign key television show ID. So what I did is said, hey, you know what? I want to add this foreign key, and I want to call it television show ID, which we did because we just added it. And then we use a terminology called references, and I say, oh, what's the name of the table that I want to reference it to? Television show, because television show is the parent. And what is the uniqueness between, what are we connecting to? Oh, we're connecting to the primary key. So this is the way that you would do the foreign key relationship that we are talking about here. Same thing. All right, so insert data. We'll go through this when we do the data thing. Write inquiries. We'll do that when we actually insert that data in there. So I'll show you how the select works. When you do a select star, that means you get everything. But if you want specific columns, you'll do the column names. And we'll do all that. We'll talk about the distinct. So let's actually do the homework, because I think the rest of it is talking about less than, equal, greater than, or let's come back to the lecture. Let's actually work on the assignment, and then we could probably close that out. We could probably you know what, we could probably add data here and use this as an example. Let's see here. I just had so many things I could do here. See, we added the standings, so we can actually add some data in here. So I'm just going to hard code some data in here instead of writing the statements for it. We can write the statements as well, but let's just write the statements. All right, so let's say insert into test.standings. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the name of the columns I'm going to insert into. And so in this case, I have standings ID, and it's an auto incrementer, so I don't have to add anything to it. It should automatically add it for me, hypothetically. So I'll do team name, I'll do wins, I'll do losses. Then we can use some of those examples that I was showing you over here with greater than, less than, and so forth. Ties, and then PCT, and there we go. And then we can add values to it. So select, and we'll say Steelers. We got Steelers. I don't know if we already have. No, we don't have Steelers in there. How many wins? It's an integer. How many? Oh, jeez. We have 5 wins, 1 loss. We only have 2, but we'll say. Actually, let's make it legit. And then 1 tie, and we'll say it's 0.522. I don't know. So if I highlight this and hit execute, it should hypothetically put it in there. Okay, so here's something good. So it said rows affected, 1 warning, data truncated for column PCT. So we must have put a wrong value in there and it got truncated off. So let's look at PCT. It has 10, so it's expecting something else in there. So it probably didn't pull anything in there. It did, but it truncated it off because we're using, we shorted off. So I'm not really worried about that. 5211. Let's make that 2 next time. So we're going to add we'll add a couple values here just to get an example here. So we'll add the Ravens. Hate the Ravens. We'll put them at 4 wins. We'll put them at 5 losses and 0 ties. And then what we'll do is we'll highlight this, execute it, runs it again, so we don't have any problems with the truncating again. Now I'll put the other team that I don't love is the Patriots. Sorry. And they're sitting at 6-2, I think. They're always doing something good. Team never does bad. All right. All right, let's see. Let's add one more team. Let's add the 49ers. They're sitting at, I think they're sitting at 2 wins, 4 losses, maybe 5 losses. I don't know. And let's just add them. Perfect. All right, so now if I go select standings, I have 4 teams here. Okay, so that was my insert statement. I'm going to take that out because I'm not worried about that. One of the things it talks about here first is it talks about greater than, equal, not equal. So these are math terminologies. So we could say, hey, select from standings, and we could say something called where. Where means when you want to find something specifically. Okay, how long has this been going on? 39 minutes, all right. So when we do where, we want to specify a filter. So if you've ever used Excel and you use a filter on something, you're filtering on something, okay? All right, so now let's say where, name of the column, we'll say where wins is greater than 4. So what we're saying is, give me everything here that has the column name wins, and the wins are greater than 4. And then we have to do a semicolon there and execute. And guess what? It didn't work. Hold on. Why didn't it work? Something is funky here. That statement. Oh, because I have a semicolon up here, a semicolon up here. So what it's doing is it's running select all from standings, and that's all it cares about. So let me get rid of that. Stupid me. And now if I hit execute, it should work. So it only gives me wins that are greater than 4, which are the Steelers and the Patriots. Now if I say, hey, give me everybody that's less than 4, hit execute, guess what? It gives me the 49ers. That's how you use less than or greater than. Or if you did, hey, give me all teams that are greater than or equal to 4. Then I could hit execute, and it gives me 3 teams because Ravens is 4 or greater, and then these two right here. So I don't have to give you a math lesson, but that's how the greater than and less than works. The other thing is and or. So let's say we know that we want to do something and. So let's say, give me everything that's greater than 4 and ties that equal 1. So now we want 2 things. We want anybody that has 4 wins or more and have at least 1 tie. Now we know that that's the Steelers, and if we execute it, that's who we should get, and that's who we should get. So you could have as many ands as you want. So that's just specifying more information that you're looking for. Or you could put or. You could say or ties equal 1. So what this means is when we run this, you're going to get one or the other answer. So how that works is whatever one is met first, then that's the result it gives you. So what it does is it says select everything from standings where wins is greater than or equal to 4. Like, okay, I got 3 people right here. Guess what? That's what I'm going to give them. Or ties equal to 1. So what we're saying is give me one or the other. So now here's the thing. Nobody has 7 wins, right? So let's say greater or equal to 7 or ties equal to 1. So we should get the Steelers right here because when it runs this, it says, that doesn't work. There's no value there, but I'll give them this value. So if I execute, and there you go. That's how the OR works. It either gives you 1 value or not. If the first one's not met, then it gives you other value. So hopefully that makes sense. That's the and or. So you'll see there's some examples here, but I like to actually give you real good examples. Let's see here. In. Okay, perfect. In. So let's go back to in statement. So in is when you include multiple things. So let's go back to here and see what we got here. And, oops, not that. Run this real quick and see what our values are again. All right, so let's say that we want to say, give me everything from standings where team names are in. So it means give me multiple team names. So say Steelers, Ravens, and let's say Browns, even though the Browns do not exist on here, and Browns. And then I hit execute. So what the end statement is when you could add multiple values of what you're looking for, that is used in an end statement. And look at that. Browns does not exist, so it's only going to show me what's in here. So I give the name of the column I want. In means in, and then you put in parentheses with ticks around the values. Now you could do, let's say that we wanted to do where wins is in, and then we could do wins. We could put 2 in anyone that has 4 wins. And you notice I didn't have to put those in ticks because they're using a whole number, and I don't have to do that. And there you go. It says, oh, Ravens have 4 and the 49ers have 2. So that's an end statement. Let's see what else they have. We're not in. So in this example here, let me pull this over here. So it has we're not in. So now you could specify, oh, okay. Give me everything where wins are not in 6, I don't know, let's say 2 or 5. And you hit execute. It's going to give you everything but I have in, not in. It's going to give you everything but 2 and 5. So those guys aren't going to be on there, but those guys are going to be on there. So we know what that select all is. Let's say that we only want to select specific information. So say that we don't care about all the information. We want name. So let's say we want team name, and that's it. We just want team name. If you run that, guess what? That's all you get is team name. So that is talking about how to do that. The between, I wouldn't recommend doing between. Between is not a really good way of getting your information. If you want a more accurate result, you could say where wins are greater than or equal to 4, 3, and wins are less than or equal to 5. That right there gives you a more defined answer versus between. Between will give you 4, but not 3 or 5. And that's where it gets a little tricky. So you want to be careful in using the between statement. I highly recommend not doing it. Like statement, you can use a wildcard. So a wildcard is something specific that you're looking for. So let's go back to the all. So let's do Control Z and go back to this. So, all right. So we want to do a wildcard. So we could say select where wins. So let's do this. Where wins are like, actually let's do this. Select from standing. So let's do teams. So let's say where team name is like, and then you could do a tick percentage, and we'll say PAT percentage tick. So it'll give us anything that's like that in the name. So there's only Patriots. So we know that that's it. So let's say that we wanted to do P. Because it's P. So if we had another team with P in it, it would give us that value. So let's do that. Let's see here. Because I don't think we have that. I don't think we have two teams that have the same name. We just have Steelers. Yeah. So let's add another name. Let's call, let me think of another name that, geez, that we could use. Let's call them the Stingrays, which don't exist, but we'll give them 4 wins, sorry. Yeah. 2 losses, 8 ties, and percentage is 0. All right, and so I didn't like that. Oh, you know, go back to our insert statement. Crap. You know what? Let's do this instead because I don't want to play with that. S. Okay, we have S in here, so this will be good. So let's put S in here. Anything equals S in here. And so what it does, it pulls everything that has S in it. So let's say that we want everything that has E in it. It pulls everything that has the letter E in it, and so forth. So you could use a like statement to get a mixed bag of nuts what you're looking for. Let's see. So wildcard. Just going through this right here. OrderedBy is like when using OrderedBy is when you want to order by something. So let's say that we did everything again. So we just want to get all the results, right? So when we run this and hit execute, we get team name, wins, losses, whatever. But let's say that we want to order by alphabetical order. So what we could do is we could come down here and say order by team name, and then put ASC for ascending, and hit that, and it'll put them in ascending order. And it'll put 49ers, Patriots. That's wrong. No, that's right. And if you want to do descending order, you could do this, and it does it from last letter all the way down to least. So you could do that, or you could just do order by team name. So then it orders it automatically, and you don't have to put ascending, descending. It's only when you want to have multiple columns. You could also do it by wins. So let's say you do want to do this but you want to be screwy. You want to do wins by descending. So then that's when it gets a little tricky. So you don't care if the wins are the most wins. You just do it the way that you want to do it. So that would be ordered by. Wow, so there's a lot to talk about. So there's count, min, and max. So count is using a function. So anything like that is a function. So let me see right here. This right here would be a function. There's min, max, sum, average. There's a bunch of them, but I'll give you an example of one here. So count. So let's say that we want to count all the records that are in the table. So we could do count star like that. And what it's going to do is it's going to give us a value. It's going to give us all the rows. So there's 4 rows in the table. Another one is we could do min. We could say, give us the min value for wins. So then what you do is you put the column name and you run it. And guess what you have? It's 2. It tells you the less wins. And then you could also, if you want to be sneaky and want to say, hey, give me the name of the team name, you could do team name. And then what you have to do here is you have to do something called a group by. Well, let me actually show you what will happen if we run this. If we run this right here, it's going to blow up. It worked. So it's a little bit different. In other languages, you have to write a group by. So this is actually pretty cool. So it tells you the name of the team, and it has the less amount of wins. That's something new I learned. So if I want to do max, actually, I think that's wrong. I think that's all wrong because Steelers have, I think that's wrong. Because Steelers have the most wins. Or not the most wins, but they have 5 wins. So that was wrong. So if I did min wins, it is 2, but it said it was Steelers. And that was wrong. So let's do this. Team name. And let's do group by after all. So let's say group by team name. Then execute it. All right, so it does. Because we're doing everything because we're not asking something specific. We're saying, hey, give us the min wins and then a team, which it starts off and gives us that value, but it still lists everything. So that's not exactly what we want. But when you do that right there, that's what you're getting. So let's take that off, and let's take this off. So let's say, hey, let's get the max value that's in here. So we know that the max value is 6. If I run that, it tells me it's 6. The other one is sum. Say that we wanted to sum up those wins all together. We just want to sum them. It just adds them up. It gives us 17. That's a sum. Average, we'll do an average of all those wins and give you the average win. And it says it's 4.25. That's average. So these are all things that are built in here. So I would recommend that you guys go through that. I talked about the group by. Joins is when you join multiple tables. This example, I'm not going to write a statement, but I'll show you here. Select employee name from employees where department's in. This right here is a subquery. I'll walk you guys through the subqueries in another video. I'll show you how to do the joins as well, how to join on one table to another table. Actually, here's a demo of one I wrote earlier. So we have, if you take this one right here with drivers and vehicle, what I'm doing is I'm selecting from the table, which is this over here. Give you an example. So we're selecting from the driver table right here, and then we're putting what values that we want. So what I did is you have to give it some type of acronym to make it easier. So I'm saying, hey, I'm referencing this table as A. So I'm saying, give me the driver's license, the name, the city, the state, the zip, and I'm pulling this information here. Then I'm doing a join. I'll say from the table, which is driver, and I'm like, hey, I want to join another table, which is called vehicle. Then I have to say, how am I going to join it on? You have to have that, and here's where we have that foreign key relationship. We have a key relationship, so we could say on a dot vehicle from this table equals b dot vehicle ID from this table. Then what will happen is it'll give us all the values that are linked together. So now not only are we getting the information over here, but we're getting data that's over in this bucket as well. So that's how the join works. A little quick, there's outer joins. I'd say read through that, how the outer joins work, and we'll talk about those. And left outer joins, right outer joins. Those are for getting all the data. Insert and update, we talked about. Delete, we talked about. Just walk through the book and see how that works. So all this information is in the book. Talks about how to alter tables, drop tables, add constraints. View we'll talk about at a later time. And that's pretty much it with the lecture. So let's, where are we at? We are sitting at 55 minutes and 7 seconds. So let's go ahead into the homework assignment real quick. And this will help you walk through it. So where is it at? It would help if I had it up. I don't think I have it up here. Yeah. I have so many column tables up here. All right. So we have chapter 3 here. And we have Heather Sweeney. So you'll want to look in the back of the book on what this is. But what we want you to do is create a DDL and a DML. I apologize. I had to get a drink. I've been talking. So what you'll do is click on my GitHub link. And I have a link out here. It takes you right here for create table and insert table. So first thing that you're going to do is you're going to click on create table. And you're going to highlight all this information. So all this stuff is scripts in here, so you don't have to. The book has it in the code in the book. So if you want to write the code down, be more than happy to do so. I wouldn't recommend it. It just takes up a lot of time. So I'm going to copy that information. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into my table. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to sign in to your MySQL. So you want to go to MySQL here. You want to sign into your workbench. And in this case, I'm going to go to the database HSD. That's what you're going to go to. And I am going to paste this information here. So what it's going to hypothetically do is going to, you want to make sure you have use HSD, which is the name of the database. And you want to run this script. So you want to have this in here and hit execute. And all right, so it doesn't like that. So it's case sensitive. So the name of my database is uppercase. I'm going to have to put HSD. And I'm going to hit execute again. And what it's going to do is it's going to work now. So it's going to create those tables. So I should have a customer, seminar, customer, etc. So if I hit this right here, hit tables, guess what? I have all those columns there. All those tables are there. So the next thing that we're going to do is that's step 1. Step 2 is to come out here and click on, I'm giving you guys how to do the homework. Next thing is coming out here and inserting this DML. So this is data manipulation language. So we're adding values to it now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy all this, come all the way down here. It's a lot of copying, but just guess what? You don't have to write all that code. Saving you a tremendous amount of time. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come over here and I am going to create a new statement and I'm going to hit paste. And I want to make sure that I have that USHD properly. So I'm going to just come over here and grab it. So I don't have to type it, even though it takes 3 seconds. Paste. Perfect. And now I'm going to hit execute. And what it's going to do is it's going to hypothetically add the data in there. And as you see here, it's inserting values into it as we speak. Perfect. So now let's test it and see if we have any data. So let's go over to contact, right click on it and select top 1000. And we'll talk about what that means another time. We have data, so that's good. Do the same thing with customer. Select customer. Guess what? We got names, we got emails. That's good. Invoice. Make sure you have data in all the columns. If you don't, then there was a problem. Line items. Boom. We got data. Perfect. Select limit. Perfect. Seminar. Perfect. Seminar customer. Awesome. So all these have data. In upcoming chapters, I'll teach you how to take that data and automatically create one of these diagrams. But in the meantime, that's your homework right there. I just did it for you, but you have to show me how you did it. So I want you to go ahead and do it and learn something out of it. And we're sitting at right under an hour. Not bad. All right. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to me. You have my email. I'm on campus. My office hours on campus are usually Mondays and Wednesdays from 3 to 6. So you're more welcome to come see me. If not, just shoot me an email. Have a great day. Thanks. Or actually, you know what? My office hours have changed. So just shoot me an email and I'll tell you what they are. Thanks. Bye.